housemoney.media. Welcome to Real Estate Maximalist. We are talking subject to today. Subject to you paying attention to how creative financing works in real estate. That's right, it's called subject to. The long and short of it, you buy someone's house and you just take over their mortgage. The mortgage stays with the house. So you're buying it subject to you being able to take over the existing mortgage in place. What is amazing about this? No credit score checked on yourself, no down payment necessary. There's so many beautiful ways to buy real estate creatively that you're probably not aware of, which is why I love today's guest, Michael Thompson, a subject to expert who has experience doing this. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty. Can't wait to expose you to this great way of buying real estate with no and low money down. Hi, welcome to Real Estate Maximalist. I'm an EXP team lead of the Alan Corey team in Atlanta, helping investors and home buyers like yourself buy real estate and making it profitable. I've done the long-term holds, the short-term rentals, the apartment buildings, the $99,000 condos. I've published books. I love talking, writing, and learning about real estate, but I find it just easier to say I'm a real estate maximalist. Glad to have Michael Thompson here on the Real Estate Maximalist Podcast. Michael, can you give us a little bit about your background, please?
Oh man, that could be a long one if you wanted it to be, but let's see. I really jumped into real estate in 2014. I was working full time as an athletic trainer originally. I wanted to control my hours, quote unquote. So I got into real estate. It was always going to be investing. It was never going to be like true retail because I got my license. I got a license as a realtor in 2014. But they immediately just like let me start managing properties. So that's what I did immediately. Just started managing rental real estate. I did some retail. My broker was fantastic. She was an amazing broker. She ended up being the president of our Central Indiana's Board of Realtors. So no one better to learn from, but didn't understand investing real estate. She just didn't understand it, right? And I knew I was heading in that direction. So I did that for 2 years, ended up opening my own brokerage at year 2. That was the requirement. They were surprised, like, wait, what, you're leaving us? I was like, yeah, I'm leaving you. For me, it was never about selling and buying and selling Joe Schmo's house for them, right? It was always going to be about investing. So cut my teeth on, I found I had a knack for finding good tenants in my property management group. So I ended up having about 30 properties under management in that first 2 years with the brokerage. They kind of let me do that.
Oh, and so you own 30 properties or you're managing other
I
people's
just
properties?
managing other people's properties. Yeah.
Okay. And which is a solid need. So you're a property manager, and
Yep.
I can tell this because I used to do property management as well, that you instantly become a connector with a bunch of investors and all the tradesmen. Like, what a great way to really throw yourself into the real estate world. Did you find the same way?
For sure. And contracts, the whole thing, I had nothing, right? I really didn't have a mentor. I absorbed everything that I possibly could and tried to figure it out. I think managing it the way I did allowed me to learn and not make catastrophic mistakes that led to my owners having a problem, right? So there were tiny mistakes that could be fixed. So yeah, at the same time, you could still find properties on the MLS, right? So I was also hunting for these owners, properties to purchase, things that ended up being whether or not I was analyzing the properties as well, trying to determine what a deal was. And I really knew the rental prices the further I got along because I could see what worked in real time in the market, which I thought that really gave me an advantage over determining what that deal is. So yeah, I did that for 2 years in that fashion.
Oh, that's awesome. So then you broke away, started your own brokerage, still managing these properties. How did
Yeah.
you go about getting into the investment and buying your own properties?
Well, in the meantime, my very first property I ever bought was on seller financing from my primary broker's mother, who was, she had retired from real estate at that point. But I bought a property from her on seller financing. Land contract, very first property I ever bought was crazy.
Walk me through the details of that.
Do you really want to know? Because like I woke up in the middle of the night and it just hit me. I bet she would sell that property to me on seller financing. Like that's literally how it happened.
And you had that thought process because it was paid off in full?
Yeah.
Or was it a bad market or?
It was, we're still reeling kind of from '08. in like 2014 because I bought it in 2015. So, she had some tenants in there that kind of didn't work out and they were gone. And it just hit me one night. I'm like, I know she'll sell that property to me on seller financing. So I approached him and she was like, yeah. So I did $5,000 down, right? And I bought the property on seller financing.
Yeah, so what were the terms?
I think it was like 3% interest. We ended up doing amortized and it was supposed to be a 3-year balloon.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
And then so you acquired it for only $5,000? And
Yep.
what was the value of the property at that time?
I think I bought it for 70,000, so I owed her 65. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's about
Yeah.
roughly what it was.
Yeah, great deal. And then you just had to refinance it or sell it within 3 years when that loan was due.
Exactly, and I ended up renting it for $900 a month. I think I payment 203%, if you can do the math on it, but I don't remember what it was, like, maybe 300-400 bucks before taxes and insurance.
I love this. I love this creative financing. I love that you are just, "Let's get started. Let me even ask," and you're obviously asking someone who's very experienced or
Very experienced, yeah.
yeah, and you were new to real estate and you weren't overwhelmed and you're like, "This is a path forward. It'll solve their problem. It'll solve my problem." And wow, it's really launched a creative financing sort of method for you. It sounds like from where you went from there to what you're doing now with what I really want to get into is subject twos. Okay, I want to jump in because I know we've all been where Michael was, laying in his bed one night, having a brilliant idea, and some of us act on that idea, right? And some of us let it go. It's much easier to act on that idea when you know of opportunities that you can take to actually follow through and buy a property. Michael acted on his idea and it worked out perfectly in his favor. Just a reminder, you don't need millions of dollars to start investing. We all start at different areas, and the more creative you're willing to be, the more successful you can buy that first, that second, that third property you're going for. Michael's ongoing outreach led to him learning about the owner and her pain points. If he wasn't building relationships with his inner circle, his first deal may not have worked out so seamlessly. Now, before we dive into the subject twos, I just want to explain what Michael meant by a 3-year balloon. All this is, it's basically saying I've got a mortgage that I got to pay off in 3 years. It could be a 30-year fixed amortization, so it's the same mortgage payments that you would on a 30-year mortgage, but a 3-year balloon just means basically the owner just says, I want to be done with you in 3 years, so you've got 3 years to figure it out. That is what a 3-year balloon, and you see this quite often in creative financing deals, commercial deals. Sometimes it's a 1-year balloon or a 5-year balloon. You can put down any type of balloon payment. It just tells you the relationship ends in 3 years. So either come and replace this mortgage with a new one or buy me out. That's the long and short of it. Can you tell us
Yeah,
what a subject to is and how you got started on this path?
sure, and it's a very commonly used term, nowadays. It's kind of become, a fashion, uh, subject a little bit, but, it really just means that, you're taking ownership of a property while leaving a lien that was previous on the property. It just stays with the property, okay? And everybody thinks that's a mortgage, and that's the most common thought process, but it's any lien. Anytime you go to buy a property and there's liens on the property, they have to be satisfied before you take ownership to get a, clear title. But you can buy the property and just have those liens just removed from the title policy, right? Like, if those liens come back and bite you, the title company is not gonna protect you, right? So, as long as you know what those liens are, you can take ownership and leave those liens on the property.
So what I'm hearing is this: someone's got a mortgage. Susie Smith has a mortgage. It's a
Yep,
$100,000 house. The mortgage is $80,000. You buy the house from Susie,
yep.
but Susie's $80,000 mortgage stays with the house.
It stays with the property, not going anywhere.
Okay, and this is everyone asks, "Is this legal?"
Yeah, it is legal. Like, it's a violation of the contract between Susie and the mortgage company, but it's not illegal, right? So, there's a difference between law and contracts. Right? So, it's there's no state statute in at least in my state or any state that I've seen that says that that mortgage has to be satisfied in order to transfer title. Think about how many times this happens, and this is where, everybody's argument kind of falls apart. How often does a married couple buy it where one person's on the title, and as soon as they get married, as soon as they get married, or even, they've got the loan in their name, they quit claim the property to them and their spouse. Happens all the time.
Or there's a divorce situation or they move out and yeah, the mortgage stays with the property. Right.
no matter what, and the title can change as many times as you want it, just depending how you do it.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where if I was the mortgager giving out money, honestly, I've agreed to the terms that, and I'm not going to look into it or really care if the payments keep coming in each month. It's when the payments stop is when, people are going to start asking questions.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that with the seller? Like that seems to be a very difficult sales pitch to say, hey, sell me your house, but keep your mortgage on it. Can you kind of walk me through that sort of
Yeah.
language and process?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that goes into who are you buying these properties from? We're trying to solve problems typically. So if we're buying the property subject to, we're going to be solving a problem. There's very few people that are in great situations, like, yeah, I want to sell my house subject to. No, we're solving something, right? So there's got to be some kind of motivation in order for them to want to do this process, and that's the first step. And so then I'm just straight up honest with them. Hey, Mr. Seller, I'm going to buy this property. I can help you in this certain situation. I'm going to do that for you, but I'm going to pay this mortgage moving forward. So I'm going to purchase the property. I'll give you a little bit of walking money, and then I'm going to keep this mortgage on the property, and I'm going to pay it moving forward. I just make it that simple.
I love this. And tell me the benefits to you for doing this.
Well, so usually that requires very little money down, right? Which you can get with an FHA loan, but as an investor, if you want to scale, that could be a little bit harder. So little money down. I didn't use any of my own credit. I didn't have to go through any banks, didn't have to do any financial requests. I didn't have to give them my tax returns, nothing, right? That's really the ease of purchasing the property is a big bonus. And then from there, you get all the benefits of owning real estate, which I'm sure you've talked about many, many times on this
Yeah.
podcast.
I mean, yeah, I love it. It's you're owning property. You've negotiated your own terms, whether is even any cash up front or not. You keep the mortgage in place. Your background check is not done. Your credit score doesn't matter. Your current
Right.
income doesn't matter. It just stays with the property. And if you ever sell that property, then you've got to pay off that mortgage, but you obviously
Yeah.
sell it for that amount and more. And if you ever miss a payment, what happens?
So, and this is where I really take this seriously because that's important. That's an important question. You can get in a lot of trouble on these if you aren't capitalized in some fashion, right? People think you can scale this from 0 to 100, great, but what if 15% of your tenants stop paying, right? I don't know why would that happen, but you're bad at finding tenants, whatever the reason. Now you can't pay these mortgages, you are damaging that person's credit. So take these very, very seriously of we're here to help. We're gonna pay your mortgage on time. There's a few things you can do, right? Some of them, aren't legal in every state. So as an example, there's something called you can do a performance deed, right? Where if I don't pay your mortgage, okay, that exercise that causes the performance deed to kick in and the property is deeded back to you. Okay, that's one thing that could happen. Not every state recognizes that. I do put it in my contracts that if I don't pay their mortgage for a 60-day period, they have to give me a 30-day right to cure. And if I don't, they get the property back. So worst case scenario, I'll quit claim it back to them via our contract. So 90 days is kind of that max amount of time that a mortgage could be missed and they'll get the property back. But usually they haven't been paying their mortgage. I buy a lot of pre-foreclosures, so they haven't paid their mortgage in a long time. Anyways, that's so far off for them. But we do want to honor that. We want to make sure that we're taking care of that mortgage monthly.
Yeah, no, that's very important. It's very important for your name and your reputation. And they tell their friends that, hey, Michael Thompson's going to take good care of me and pay off this mortgage. Yeah. And you're right. They're probably the ones that are most open to this are probably either already making late on their payments or about to be late on their payments. And so being late again doesn't really matter to them. All right. You might have heard some unfamiliar lingo there from Michael. Just want to button it up for you. Quit claim deed. This is just a term where you're transferring the deed from one person to the next. You're quitting ownership and saying this person's the new owner. An attorney can do this for $150. It just changes the name on the title. That's what a quit claim deed is. Also, a performance deed, it basically says, hey, this contract, I am to perform on paying your mortgage payments. If I do not, I've failed at my performance of paying the mortgages, then the recourse is you get the house back. You get the property back because I didn't live up to my end of the bargain. And 30-day right to cure, which just says, hey, I'm giving you 30 days notice. You made a mistake. You have 30 days to cure it. Show me the remedy. Usually that remedy and that mistake is you haven't paid the mortgage. I want you now, within the next 30 days, pay the mortgage on time and pay any overdue fees, any late payments, anything that you haven't done like you said you would. You have 30 days to correct it. If not, I also get the property back. So let's get into a little bit more, Michael, now. Are they living in the property, or are you buying these from investors, or what's the situation? Like, do you make them move out?
Yeah, I've taken a stance of having them move out. Not everybody that I know has that does that. Sometimes they'll do some rent back. I think it gets a little sticky, but yeah, I'm buying properties usually from homeowners, not LLCs typically, that are looking to sell for whatever reason. And yeah, I'm making them move. It's a lot of times they want to move. They just want to have a fresh start, go somewhere else and just not think about this property anymore. Some people want to continue living the property. I try to point them at other options, whether that's, some kind of, loan of some kind, but it really just depends on everybody's circumstances.
I mean, as an investor, if they're having trouble paying their mortgage, they're probably going to have trouble paying rent. So I would imagine a clean break is probably best for all parties.
Yeah, and I don't want to stand in front of a judge and be like, yeah, I took ownership of the property and they continue to live it. Now I'm going to kick them out because they
Right.
stopped paying me. Like, I don't want to stand in front of a judge and say that. I'd rather just have a clean situation.
Right. And you're trying to help them. And then that does not create a helpful situation down the road.
Right.
How many subject to deals have you done to date?
Yeah, I mean, so 18, which is not like enormous amount, but that's how many I've done. Part of it with all the creative deals, 18 of them, most of them subject to the one seller finance that you know. I've done also a few hybrids or mix in that, which we could talk about, but that's some form of buying subject to, and then also paying the equity out to the seller on monthly payments.
Are you always bringing money to the table? Have you ever had to do a deal where you didn't have to bring any money to the table?
Yeah, close, not quite $0, very close. I had a lady that was in foreclosure and she was actually able to modify the loan. So we did a modification, which helped catch up the arrears, but she still wanted out. I gave her like $500 in closing cost. So that's the
Nice.
cheapest house I ever bought. And by the way, that house was built in 2012. Like,
Wow.
it doesn't get better than that, right? Like, and the mortgage actually becomes more favorable as well because when they do the modifications, they're usually trying to lower that monthly payment,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, yeah, nothing to be doing.
And so what do you still own that house and rent it out today?
Nope, we ended up selling that property and cashing out of the equity and rolling into other stuff.
How much did you sell that for?
So we bought it for a touch under 200,000 and I think we sold it for 265.
I mean, that's magic to my ears. It cost you $500 to buy a $250,000 house. You made $15,000 more on top of that. I'm sure there was a delta between the 250 and what they owed on the mortgage. So, what a return on the money. That's amazing. What was the equity sort of payouts that you said that was sort of another creative financing?
Yeah, and that's the tough one, right? Is when they have a lot of equity and you're still trying to buy it creatively. I'd rather almost them own the property outright. You can kind of make that with more favorable terms, but because if they have a ton of equity, it's like you could just sell the property regularly, right? And just take a discount. One of the most recent ones we did, we owe the guy like I think we bought it for 205 and we did 20 grand down, owing 185. I think we owe him another 40 to 50,000, right?
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
on a monthly payment.
And so it's not a mortgage. It's like we've agreed on this. It's sort of like a mortgage, but it's just big windfalls and over time until it's paid
No,
off.
no, we did a straight mortgage with him. So
Oh, okay.
I gave him grand up front. So that's the big windfall that he got, right? And then from there, it's monthly payments until we do a balloon at the end. So that's when he really gets his windfall, right? But in the
Absolutely.
meantime, I've got the property written out. We actually sold that property on rent to own because that's our favorite, at least my favorite exit now. When I buy these properties subject to selling on lease options, rent to own, because my property management days, I don't want to be in the maintenance game anymore. We end up doing that.
So let's talk about the benefits of rent to own. You are basically you're renting the property, but
Yep.
within the lease, there's an option for them to buy it.
Yep.
And Can you walk me through the terms of that option and why that's favorable?
Sure. So once again, the biggest thing is the maintenance for me. That's one of my I don't want to deal with maintenance calls. I don't have to when I do it this way because we put the maintenance on them. We want this to be a property that they eventually own. So the biggest thing is that option money, right? So we separate it out. They have an option fee, which we do take that off the purchase price of the property. End up just reducing the purchase price based on that option fee that they give us. We do look for 10% down. That's our goal. Obviously, more is better. They don't have to have all of that today, right? We want a good amount today, but we could put them on a payment plan for their down payment over the life of the option. We'll do somewhere between 3 and 5 years on the option. So they have that long to purchase the property, which gives them enough time to kind of get their credit in order, get to a place that they can purchase the property with traditional bank financing.
The option lease puts the repairs on the tenant?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And one of the things I didn't do that I've moved to being part of another group is they put taxes and insurance on them as well.
Oh,
So I have
wow.
not done that. Yeah, yeah. So that'll be the next step in the evolution to not have to worry about that as well. And that because what happens is, think about it. When I buy a property subject to, right? And that owner has a homestead deduction. Okay, if you want to get into taxes, so that lowers their tax burden. But
Right.
when they sell the property, some counties will kick that homestead deduction off the property, and now your taxes go up, which is gonna affect your escrow. So your cash flow is gonna dwindle as you, do your lease option, right? Because that's a fixed number. So if you're willing to do the tax and insurance on it now, your cash flow is gonna not dwindle.
Why is this a benefit for not just seller financing it to your tenants?
Yeah, so one thing is control, right? If I'm you could do a wrap because remember I bought these properties subject to, so I like having some form of control and not giving up control, like, from a wrap perspective where I'm actually giving title to my end buyer. When I sell it on lease option, I've got control of the property to kinda make sure it all goes through. It's beneficial to them because they're gonna get a property at a price they can afford. Maybe they have some credit challenges they've never owned before, and we're gonna help them through their credit challenges over the next 3 to 5 years. We put them through a program where that's actually gonna help their credit get to a place they can afford the property. In the meantime, we got their back.
Yeah. And have you ever been in a situation where you agreed on a price 3 to 5 years later in the future, and the house is worth way more than you agreed to or way less than you agreed to?
Yeah, I mean, the very first lease option I ever did was worth significantly more than I optioned it for, right?
Yeah.
So I learned that hard lesson. Luckily, it didn't go down, but yeah, it went up significantly. The property was worth about probably 190, 185 as it sat, and I owed 165. So I ended up selling on a lease option for 210, and
Yeah.
that property is now worth 265.
Wow.
So yeah, that's a bummer, but it's just one of those things that you live and you learn, and you know that you got to kind of test the boundaries of that market. I can always reduce price later
Right.
on,
Right,
but I
right.
can't increase it later on.
Yeah, of
So
course.
that's the problem that I learned.
How do you find the buyers that would be open to subject to? What's your process?
Well, that's a great question, and my views have kind of changed on this over time. I would have told you pre-foreclosures was the absolute only way to really do it, and that's a great way to still find them. But my thought process has changed. Really, it's just about finding motivation. It's any particular type of niche list that people think they're going to get right. It's just understanding that this is something you can use in situations. So it's about finding people that have a need, and you can fill that need creatively without banks or any kind of traditional financing. That's it.
Yeah, I teach this all the time. It's how many tools are in your tool belt. It's like if you find a deal, you got to know a bunch of different ways to move that deal forward that are traditional and untraditional and creative.
Yep.
So, but who do you know to even call, or what's your process to? Are you sending letters? Are you making phone calls? Are you knocking on doors? What's that
Yeah.
process?
Well, I have a wholesale business, that I own. I've been really since probably late 2015, even while I was still in my brokerage, right? In the previous brokerage before I opened my own, was finding off-market real estate. So I made that part of the things that I've learned, and I've turned that into a business, and that's really the key piece. But honestly, I've had a lot of success lately of buying properties subject to from wholesalers as well. So that's the people that we're purchasing from. But in general, lead generation is if part of my world. I think it always will be. I don't think I'll ever get to a point that I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to hunt for off market real estate. Call it a wholesale business, call it what you want. I'm always going to have some lead generation. I've done it all. I've done cold calling. I've done text message blast. I've done direct mail, and we're in the thick of Facebook marketing now, which is one of our lead generation points.
And so it's sort of want to sell your house fast or quick or so that sort of messaging. I'm here to Michael Thompson's here to solve your problem. And then you get them on the phone and you really understand their problem. Do they want to sell fast and how fast? And is it a subject to possibility or is this more of a seller financing possibility? Is like it's a wrap, situation. Yeah, that's what you're trying to figure out on the phone. And you don't say, "No, I only do subject to." You're like, "Yeah, let's find a way forward." And I know a bunch of different ways to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just trying to solve problems, trying to figure out what's the best way to solve this particular issue, whatever their challenge is.
I love that because it makes every day different. Every day's fun. Is this a full-time gig for you? Are you doing this
Mhm.
part-time or yeah.
Yep. Full-time gig, I probably went 2 years too early into full-time. Even when, I opened my own when I really did my brokerage, I expanded the property management company, ended up having about 150 units under management. But, it wasn't really a huge passion. It was just something I had a skill for. So, yeah, full-time since, I guess, summer of 2016.
So if someone's listening here and they're like, "I wanna be you, Michael," like I would imagine a lot of people do because this is very exciting, this is great. You're getting creative, buying houses with no and very little money down. And where do they even start? Like, what would you recommend someone that wants to be a Michael Thompson Jr. here?
That's a tough one. Where to start is, first off, I like to just do a little bit. So that's exactly kind of how I did it. I didn't know how to run a property management company. I didn't know how to do property management, but I just told people that this is what I want to do. Like when I told my brokerage I want to do property management, first person that walked in the door was like, "Hey, we need property managers." So, and it was just it was like this older lady that had two properties. She lived off these two properties. She just went through a nasty eviction. So I just did it, and then I just started learning. Like, I became a student of whatever it is that I'm trying to learn. When I went on my subject to creative financing hunt, I just started searching anything that I could find of people that were doing it, but it didn't stop me from doing that first deal. I just did it,
Mm.
right? I always figured you can fix problems later and then just try to go out and cause these problems, like cause the issues and fix them later rather than sitting on the sideline because you'll never be fulfilled in your knowledge quest, I think. And if I'm constantly bringing in information and I'm never taking action, it's not going to turn out. So take imperfect action.
No, I love that. I think people are, "Hey, let me read another book. Let me do another, listen to 10 more podcasts. Let me, do a weekend seminar." And it's good to have the confidence and the knowledge, but you're gonna learn much quicker and faster doing active learning, rather than passive learning. So, yeah, get out
Yeah,
there and you might as well try and fail forward, there's
right.
no harm done. We've talked about, like, the highlights here. What would you
Yeah.
say are some of the lowlights, maybe some mistakes that you've made that, and anything that you can look back on that we can maybe learn from the, painful lessons that you've taken sort of through this creative finance investing?
Yeah. I'll give you two. One's more global and one's specific. So the first one that I'll tell you about specific is I thought I was slick. This is before, like I said, go out and cause problems and fix them later kind of thing. And I absolutely did that. So when I was buying my property subject to early on, was buying them in a trust and I was naming the trust after the seller. So imagine that, like Johnny Smith revocable trust or land trust, depending on your state, right? And that bit me in the butt 2 years later after buying a property subject to very, that's actually the deal that I told you about where I bought it for very little money down, right? 2 years later, she's like, "Hey, I want my property back." I'm like, "Well, it's not your property. You
Right.
don't own it anymore. I've been paying the mortgage on it for 2 years. What do you mean your property back?" So she's like, "Well, my name's on the title." Yeah, it is on the title. Not really. It's not. It's a name, but it just happens to match your name. I was very clear with her. Don't get me wrong, but people forget. 2 years is a long time. Life happens. They don't remember. They just know that values went up 30%, which nobody like, I didn't expect
Yeah.
values to go up 30% all of a sudden. When I bought that property, I was truly buying it at retail,
Mhm.
right?
Right, right,
2 years later, property goes 30%. Like, that's why I solved your problem. I'm not making money today. I'm making my money down the line. But you don't get to make that money with me.
right, right,
I
right.
helped you then.
Yeah.
So that was one lesson I learned. I no longer do that. I still buy properties in trust. I love trust,
Yeah.
especially for single family properties, but I will put it as the street address because when I'm buying it subject to, I'm gonna put it
So,
street.
so she actually had a case because you named the title in her name.
Now she lost. Like
Uh,
I had to
it was
sit
just a
and
fight. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, but that's the stuff you have to deal with, right? And I
Right.
could have wilted and be like, okay, the
Yeah.
property's yours. Like, no, I own the property. I own the trust that owns the property. You don't own it. I try to be nice about it. And, but I'll tell you what she did do that did cause a little problems is, when I buy property subject to, we have to get a power of attorney, right?
Mhm.
That power of attorney allows us to talk to the mortgage company. She revoked the power of attorney.
Oh, great. Yeah.
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 So luckily we still had online access. So we were able to order the payoff with the property. And that's part of the decision we went into selling that property is like, you know what? Like, do we want to fight her on it? Could we fight her on it? Probably. Do I want to go to court? No. Let's just sell it and cause that as a lesson learned.
Yeah.
And we're on to the next thing. So
Okay.
that's the
You said
first
that.
thing.
Okay. Yeah. Let's hear the second. Yeah.
Yeah. The more globally is that I have partnered up with people that didn't exactly turn out the way I'd hoped. Right.
Mhm.
So I partnered quickly and I partnered with people that didn't exactly have the same values as myself, or maybe that we had the same strengths, right? And that left to cause maybe some overlapping of our skills. So that was part of the like I partnered with two people that maybe I shouldn't have, and that came to back to bite me in the end.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's the big one.
So that's great. In that, I mean, not great that it happened, but it's a
Right.
great
Right.
message to share. And yeah, and it sounds like what I heard is you almost want to partner with someone with complementary skill sets. If
Yeah.
you have two strengths, then that means you both have the same weaknesses, and that's not the best way moving forward. So if you're the detailed person, let someone else not be the detailed person. If you're the outgoing caller and the relationship
Sure.
builder, let someone be the paperwork person, or whatever. It's gotta be a good partnership to really thrive. So
And values, right?
yeah, yeah,
Now your values can align. I think that's great,
that's true.
but your strengths should complement.
Yeah, values and like because you're dealing with sometimes sellers in distressed situations, and if you're not, empathetic, it could really sort of, put pour gasoline on the fire in terms of relationships and things like that. I would imagine.
I mean, one of my mentor in the subject too always said, "Do the right thing even when it's hard."
Yeah,
Right?
I like that. Yeah, definitely. So the questions I have is like there's a lot of things that you said that were very specific, like, oh, of course you got to buy it in the trust. You've got to, have a power of attorney for a mortgage. Like, can you kind of dig deeper on sort of these must have and why you sort of recommend these
Yeah,
approaches? Yeah.
yeah. Now the trust is kind of up in the air. Some people don't like purchasing the properties in trust. The trust is just it's basically almost an entity of itself, right? It's the true owner of the property, right? You're not the owner of the property. The trust owns the property. Very similar to how an LLC owns the property.
So you don't want to put in Michael Thompson's name. You want to create a new entity called Address Trust and put it in there. And why? What's the benefit of that?
I do that just for a couple reasons. Like, look, it's a paper tiger in a way, right? Like we're still violating the due on sale clause, which we haven't even got into, right? Anytime you buy a property subject to, there is a clause within the mortgage that says when title transfers, the mortgage company has the right, but not the obligation to call the whole loan due. So we're trying to mask that just a little bit, but I like trust for other reasons other than just that.
Mhm. Because a mortgage lender could say, wait a minute, I got a notification. The owner of this changed from Sally Sue to 534 Trust. Oh, no problem. She just put her name in the trust. We're not going to
Right.
dig any deeper. Okay. I got
Yeah.
it. Okay. So what are the other reasons that you're
Well, I like trust because they're easy to transfer, right? It's all internal. I can make my LLC the beneficiary, so still get the pass through my entity, so I can make my LLC the beneficiary. I can make myself a beneficiary if I want, if I don't have an LLC. And then also you can transfer beneficiary status to whoever you like, right?
So if you sell this to someone else or someone else takes over, you just changing the internal documents of the trust and they don't have to create their own new trust and you pass it on there. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You just get to pass that through.
I love it. Okay. And so then let's talk about the power of attorney on the mortgage
Yeah.
and sort of the thought process and reasoning for that.
Yeah. Power of attorney for the property in general just gives you access to everything that you might need to, right?
Even though you own it,
Even though you own it. Yeah,
Okay.
because the one of the yeah, you own it, correct, but it's dealing with all the ancillary companies that have to deal with it, whether it's insurance companies, whether that's the mortgage company. Really, the big 2 is insurance and mortgage. You gotta be able to deal with those directly on behalf of the original seller, okay? And so we do a power of attorney allowing us to deal with them. There's also a couple of other releases you can get that just allows you to have conversation with the bank. The thing is, though, banks have different internal ways they want to deal with people on behalf of the original person on the mortgage,
Mm,
right? Sometimes they require a power of attorney. Sometimes they require a call and say, you can speak to this person, right?
right.
Sometimes it's an email. So you have to understand that process first, get access so you can speak on their behalf and be able to talk to the bank moving forward. So one of those things, it's more durable is that power of attorney.
Yeah, that makes complete sense because yeah, you just gotta, hey, I want to change the utility bills or whatever it is. You got to prove that you're the person that can make those decisions and
That's
yeah.
that's less likely
All
or
right.
or not as needed because I can show that I'm the owner of the
Okay.
beneficiary or the
Okay.
beneficiary of the trust. It's
Got it.
really just the insurance and because another mistake that people make, when you own a property, the deeded owner of the property has to be the primary insured, okay? Well, we just bought the property into a trust. Now the trust has to be the primary insured person,
Mhm.
but the mortgage company always wants to see the original seller's name, whoever's on that mortgage,
Right.
on the insurance policy. So we have them as an additional insured. Okay. Then you also have the mortgagee clause. So the bank is also on the insurance policy. So you have these 3 people on the policy. So what happens if you have a claim? Well, mortgage companies gonna want to see that the work's done or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And then they're also, in order to cash that check, there's got to be 3 signatures on the property. You, the deeded owner of the property, the beneficiary of the trust, the original seller,
Oh, wow.
which you're
Yeah.
not gonna find anymore, which is
Right.
why the power of attorney is so important.
Okay.
That allows you to sign that potentially. One thing too is having your bank on your side, right? Showing them that you're going to, at some point, may have an insurance claim and here's the situation, right? And saying that, "Hey, I got this power of attorney for this property. I'm gonna be signing this check on their behalf."
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
lastly is the mortgage company.
So this power of
That's high
attorney
level
doc
stuff, by the way.
that that
Hopefully, I'm
that
not
that
not
seems
confusing people.
no, I mean, this is great knowledge to have. So that power of attorney document, it just says Michael Thompson or this trust, the beneficiaries of this trust are have full permission to make all decisions regarding this property at this address for
Yeah,
forever. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, forever for the life of the property, and that to sign all documents, to endorse all items, right? Everything.
Do you ever have a seller just sort of freeze, like, "What's going on? What is this? Well, I'm signing this," or are they just sort of like, it seems like that would be a lot of hand holding throughout this whole process.
It is. I mean, that's the paperwork is kind of a beast when it comes to that perspective, and you try to just get out in front of it. I wasn't great at that early on, right? I didn't know what I didn't know. So, after having experience, you're just trying to get out in front of that stuff. Hey, look, I'm going to get a power of attorney on this property. Here's why. I got to be able to make decisions unless you want to, meet up with me every month for the next 20 years. Don't want to do that? Okay, great.
Right.
Then you're going to sign this power of attorney that gives me, I don't want your bank accounts. I don't want to deal with your grandmother's house after she passes away. I want to deal with this property only.
Do you find that you have to educate closing attorneys, or are they sort of, "Oh, we see this all the time and this is comfortable," or did you have to shop around to find the right person that knew these nuances and knew how to guide
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I had to find those people and not every state or location has it. You can't just go to any closing attorney or title company and be like, "Hey, here's what I'm doing." They don't all understand it. You got to have the right people. And that's going to be very specific location, depending on your the part of the state or country of who you find. I tell you what I ended up doing is I moved from central Indiana down to southern Indiana, right across the river from Louisville, Kentucky. And I had a great closing attorney, a title company in central Indiana that I use for all my creative deals. I don't have anybody down here that does it. So we just do remote closing packages. I hire a notary. I
Mhm.
pick a building here. We close it here, ship all the documents back up north
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
because I
yeah,
like them that
once you
much.
find your team, you
Yeah.
gotta keep that team intact. Yeah. All right. I love it. Michael Thompson, you can follow him on Instagram, ML Thompson II, or Twitter, Michael T REI. Thanks for jumping on Real Estate Maximalist. And I'm definitely going to be following up with you because this is a knowledge people are craving, and you have so much experience in it. So I think thank you for sharing everything you're doing, and I'm excited to see where you go with this. Wow. Subject to blowing your mind. Did you know this was even possible? I love it. This is definitely a way to be creative and buy real estate when you're broke. I actually teach the broke method to real estate investing. There's 25 different strategies that I walk you through in my course at realestatemexi.com to buy real estate with no and low money and zero money. And subject to is just one of those 25 ways. So if you want more of this, or if this is not for you and want to learn about other ways, definitely the broke method to real estate investing is what you are ready to take. But I want to thank Michael again for sharing his wisdom, and thank you for listening. Make sure you follow me at Real Estate Maxi on social media. Ask me all the questions you have about this topic or other topics. I'll be happy to answer to the best of my ability. And if you learned anything from this podcast, please share it with a friend, or as equally as good, write a wonderful podcast review for me. Send me a screenshot. I will retweet it, promote it on Instagram, put some of the spotlight back on you for being such a nice person. Thanks for checking out Real Estate Maximalist. I'm your host, Alan Corey, and I'll see you next time.